The light seared my vision as I stepped onto the stage, my notes trembling in my hand. Row upon row of faces, tight-mouthed, arms crossed, their patience already spent. I was sweating through my shirt, my tongue almost glued to the roof of my mouth from nerves and spite. This was supposed to be my chance, my big pitch, years in the planning, my dream. Around me, the trappings of the Vancouver Investors Food Showcase, gleamed white tablecloths, slick white displays. Startup logos stenciled with gold leaf, but my voice quavered. I think there's unique space for honest neighborhood food, dishes that mix my Obachan's teachings with West Coast. A hand rose, the diamond ring catching the spotlights. No one's going to eat miso on sourdough, Mr. Kumagai. Snickers, faces with no warmth. I finished my pitch, voice ragged and thin, words tumbling out and tripping over each other. My slides malfunctioned, family photos frozen on screen at the wrong moment. A childhood shot of me and my grandmother stirring a pot of Odin. The room barely looked at me. When the questioning started, it was clear most investors didn't see my kiosks as a business, only as the hobby of a desperate dreamer. I stepped off stage to the sound of forced applause, my chest a coiled spring of humiliation and anger. I saw my Uncle David waiting by the exit, arms folded. His tie was crooked, his lip curled as he tried not to smirk. Still at it, huh? I told your folks open a convenience store, not a damned vanity project. He leaned forward, voice dropping so no one else would hear. You forgot your roots, chasing fusion food. Doesn't work outside TV. I stuffed my hands in my pockets to keep them from shaking. You only get one shot, Uncle. He grunted. Just don't embarrass your mother. I will never forget what burning humiliation feels like, the way it hollows you out and fills you with cold. That night, I called my mother and tried to pretend I hadn't already been chewed up and spat out. Just come back to the family shop, she said gently, voice muffled by the hum of her rice cooker. Your brother is keeping up, but we could use you. It's not what I want. Yes, but your head is always up there. I could tell she was smiling sadly, picturing me hopping uselessly from plan to plan. You need stability, Darren. I told her I'd think about it, even though I'd already made up my mind. I would scrape together the rest of my savings, and if all else failed, I'd try again. Only this time, I wouldn't aim for the big prize. I'd do one thing well, and I'd do it alone. Vancouver is beautiful when you're walking home in defeat, the city slick with fog and neon. On Commercial Drive, the streets smell of cumin, spilled espresso, wet earth, and cherry blossoms smashed underfoot. It made me ache, not just with anger and longing, but something deeper, a hunger. I spent months working every menial kitchen job I could find, stacking chairs at a Taiwanese cafe, washing dishes in a sushi joint off Kingsway, slicing onions until my fingers cracked, my eyes felt raw. Every shift, I watched the chefs, how they handled the wok, how they plated, what shortcuts they took, what corner store tricks became house specialties. Sometimes at 2 a.m., I'd wander to the edge of the pier on Granville Island, staring at the dark, stinking water, watching gulls fight over chip bags. At home, I cooked for myself. In my cramped apartment, I hoarded flyers and bent over recipe books, experimenting, failing, eating every mistake. Sour miso butter seeping through burnt bread, daikon slaw that wilted, ramen-breaded chicken thighs fried until crisp, but too salty. The kitchen was my confessional, my workshop, my therapist. I told myself I would return to the pitch stage, not as a supplicant, but as a man who could show what he'd done, with nothing but wounds and work. A year passed, then another. My bank account shrank, my hands grew rougher. For a time, I thought maybe my uncle was right. Dreams were the luxury of the rich or the foolish. Then, one night, just after closing, Ming, the Vietnamese line cook, nudged me. "You're always here late. Trying to break in?" he joked. He saw my hesitation. "Come on. You got something cooking, I know it. Let's try." I swallowed my pride and brought him upstairs to my walk-up, a box that rattled every time a bus passed. I opened my fridge and started to cook without thinking, hands moving as if on their own, the way my grandmother taught me. I made grilled sablefish with a yuzu glaze, made sourdough, then spooned miso butter on top while it was still steaming. I ground up nori with chili flakes and made a crunchy topping, then placed it carefully on each piece. I watched Ming's face as he ate. He licked the plate. This is special, man." He grinned at me, eyes shining. "You should open a pop-up." I almost feigned indifference, but his encouragement lit a fragile hope inside me. Ming lent me his old folding tables. I borrowed a battered propane burner from a friend, wincing at the shoddy weld along the side. At dawn on Saturday, I set up outside Trout Lake Farmers Market, like breath steaming in the air. First day, I sold 6 plates, barely covering supplies. Next week, 10. The following, a local blogger asked for an interview. The small victories fed some hard, bright thing inside me. But family was never far away. It seemed like every kumagai in Metro Vancouver wandered by at some point, all with the same look, gentle amusement or frank disbelief. My brother Taro came early, arms full of produce from our family shop. "You really gonna keep doing this?" he asked, eyeing my precarious setup. "I am, and I will." Sweat trickled down my jaw as I fried fish, the scent drawing a trickle of hungry onlookers. "Either support me or do me a favor and buy breakfast elsewhere." He laughed, but it wasn't cruel. "Fine, just don't poison anyone." There were harder moments too. My cousin Mariko came by with her newborn, tisking. "My dad says you still owe him $500 for that driver's test back in the day. You sure you want to be out here, making a scene?" "I'm doing what I believe in," I snapped, sharper than I meant. She took a step back, sensing the heat in my tone, but she stayed. Over the next months, the market became a second home. The fog would roll in, dampening the air, soaking through my jacket. The regulars grew to recognize me. Old Iranian men with battered hats, Somali Canadian mothers picking through peaches, shy white hipsters with tattooed arms. A little girl drew a picture of me, the toast man, and gave it to me with sticky jam fingers. I taped it to my tent's post. By the year's end, lines snaked down the block. I was featured in Vancouver Eats as the city's fusion underdog. Word spread slowly but surely. Each week, I'd step out and force myself not to flinch at all the faces watching, judging. Still, the city's lunar pull is relentless. I'd feel anger gnawing at my ribs as old schoolmates drifted by, offering easy small talk or backhanded encouragement. I'd swallow the rage, keep my chin down, and cook. My first real restaurant came 2 years later. A rundown corner spot on Commercial Drive, its floors sticky from the ghosts of 3 failed donut shops. I signed the lease with shaking hands, then spent sleepless nights painting, hammering, scrubbing. With Ming as my sous chef, we did almost everything ourselves. Opening night came too soon. My mother called, her voice soft. "Is it too late to wish you luck?" I could hear uncertainty in her words. "Not too late, Mom. When you were a boy, you wanted to make everyone happy. Your food does that now, ne?" I nodded, even though she couldn't see. We opened to a crowded room. Friends, former customers, curious locals. The kitchen seethed with chaos and hope. Our menu was small. Yuzu black cod ochazuke, Miso sourdough with brown butter, ramen fried chicken, everything I'd tested at home, refined and stubbornly mine. By midnight, I could barely stand. But each empty plate sent back clean made the years of hunger worthwhile. The restaurant survived another season, and then another. We had slow nights, busted pipes, equipment failures, days the reviews were mixed, or worse, a couple locals complained about weird flavors. Or trying too hard. But enough of them came back. Word kept spreading. I watched the city shift around me. Skyscrapers climbed, rents climbed higher. My uncle appeared once or twice, standing awkwardly among a crowd of customers, hands in his pockets. He looked at the menu as if it was in a foreign language, his eyes lingering on my name, burned into the wood above the kitchen pass. He didn't say anything, but I saw something flicker across his face, pride maybe, or just the knowledge that he'd been wrong. A few years in, after some success and a small write-up in the Globe and Mail, I returned to the Investors Food Showcase. This time, I wasn't pitching, I was catering. I arrived early to set up. My crew wore crisp black aprons, Ming orchestrating like a general. We unloaded chafing dishes, lined up trays of miso sourdough, seared sablefish cubes. New recipes that hadn't even made it onto the menu yet. As the guests arrived, I caught the eye of the suit with the diamond ring, the same investor who'd laughed out loud during my first brutal pitch. He looked older now, stooped a little, his hair grayer along the temples. He took a plate absently, then stopped cold, brought a bite of fish to his mouth. I watched, breath caught in my chest as his eyes widened. He bent down over his phone, then looked up, scanning the room for the chef. Another wave of guests swept in. Journalists, restaurateurs, all the alumni of the earlier years. My uncle, looking sheepishly out of place in a rack-rent blazer, edged his way to the